Okay, so I'm going to go into WebStorm. We can write some code in here. So let's see, I'm going to create a new file, and you can create one too, you can do together. We just not style. Let's call these the HTML, and I'll use this just maybe unit 2a, okay, .html. All right, let me zoom this in. If you're using this IDE here, I want to make sure that you have the correct version of JavaScript running. Otherwise, you may have some errors. So just to make sure, if you go and click this little wrench up here, that's the shortcut for the settings, right? Or file and then settings, either way. But click there, and if you go to the bottom of the tab here, the languages and frameworks, under this JavaScript, you click that. You want to make sure that you're using the JavaScript 6 or 5.1 or higher. Okay, so if it's 3, make sure you change it to at least 5.1 or even 6. Okay, so I usually just put 6 here. Okay, so the JavaScript 6, I think it's the same as the 1.8 here. This is 1.85. This is like the Mozilla version, because they keep their own version, you know, just like Java, right? Yeah, 1.8 point something is version 8. But the standard version is the JavaScript 6. I think they have 7 in the making already. But so if you put 6 here, you should be good. This is only for within the IDE. It doesn't mean that it's gonna port this over to the browser. Okay, your browser has your own version, has its own version, and so most browsers do not support, maybe don't support 6 yet. Okay, or I mean, I should say most, I should say some. Okay, but I think most of them should support 5 already because it's been around for a couple years. Yeah. This window? Yeah, you click. Did you have this tool up here? Yeah, click the wrench. And then if you go down to the languages and frameworks, expand that. And then if you click on JavaScript, and the drop down is here. Okay, so you will make sure you have, just put 6. If you have 6 in there, just put 6. If you don't, just put 5.1. And if you don't have it, then if you have 3, for example, then later on if you use a strict mode, it doesn't work. If you use the let keyword, it doesn't recognize it, and it won't work in your code. I mean, it will run in the browser. It's just that the IDE doesn't recognize it. Okay, so let's go in here and let's see, what should we do in here? So variable names, we already know that already, but events. Okay, let's do with the events here. And let's just say I have, we can use the button example, is fine. So button type, okay, usually button, you go like that and you type, and you put here, press me or something, right? That's a typical button. So if you want to attach an event to this button, again, you put it on the left side of the tag, the opening tag, not the closing tag. You never put on the closing tag, okay? So here, it doesn't matter which order, okay? You can put on in any order you want. So if you put like, you type on, you see all these different events that you can attach to this button here. Okay, so mouse enter, mouse over. A mouse enter is kind of like the on hover, right? You hover and then it loads it. It does something. Okay, so we'll just use the popular one with onClick here. OnClick here equals, and then you put a double quotes. Inside this space here. Inside here is same thing as saying script, right? So if you put that up here, just to show you. this space in here, okay, this space in here is the same as this space in here. Okay, so that means that it's a valid Java space, script space, right? So you can embed all your code in here. You can write variables, you can write functions in here just like you could in this area up here. It's not, that's why I think one of the examples you did, you write some functions in here, right? Document get something, and then it would replace or update one of the a few input, right? So you can do that. You can do all your code here, but I mean it's not really efficient. That shouldn't be the way to do it. It's just the book just show you that you can do that. Okay, so typically you would basically just load a function here, and you would write your code somewhere else, either within the same document or you write that code in a separate file, and then you just link it back to the code, to the page. Okay, so in here, why don't we like link this click to a function, and we could just say this function called show message, okay, and and then we have to write the function because it's a user-defined function. You define it yourself. Okay, so therefore it's going to look for this function in the body of this document because it's not part of the global or the browser object, which is the window object. Right? It does not find it, so it won't run. But we have to supply that. So somewhere in your code up here, we have to write a function for that, and we'll talk about function later tonight. But let's just say we create this function. For now, it's just very simple, right? Function, the word function here, and the IDE does most of the thing for you already. So function followed by the name of the function name. In this case, is show message. So you treat the name of the function just like a variable name, okay? Which means you cannot have duplicate names. So you cannot have two functions with the same name in here, and they will there'll be an error. And that is why if you have if you load another a JavaScript from outside to your code, sometimes you might have an issue because you don't know what the other person's code have. You might override their function, or you might have the same function as they do, and so therefore it run into some type of conflict, right? So there have to be certain way to remedy that. Okay, so inside this function here, we are going to let's just do a okay, alert is fine. We'll put alert here, easy. Hi, JavaScript. Okay, I just put that. You can put any message you want, doesn't matter. And again, always terminate with a semicolon. Okay, I highly recommend that because most languages you run into use semicolon, although it's not required in JavaScript. That's why again it's very loose. So I don't know. It's always both advantage disadvantage. It just looks weird to me if I don't see a semicolon. It's just like, when does this line end? So just force it to be there and make that a habit. I think it's always good to put that in there. So I believe that in the future, eventually it will force everybody with this language to use semicolon. So that's that, right? We'll save this file, and then go ahead and see if this thing runs. So click your favorite browser, and then there is right here. Let me do this. Let me shrink that so we can see it. Okay. So if I click on it, there's the message. Okay. I mean, there are ways actually you can actually style this windows too, but that's a little bit more advanced. But for now, this is a default window that will load this message. So very simple. You attach that to this click. All right. How about we change it to something else instead of on click? You can change it to like just say on mouse here, right? A mouse enter, right? If you mouse enter, I mean just the same thing. It just means you don't click anymore. once your mouse enter the box, it should load the message. Okay, so if I go back and reload this page, okay, so if I put mouse over, it loads it, right? So this way you don't have to click it. You can attach all of those events in there if you want, just to play with it. You can put both a mouse enter and then the other one too. So that event and just showing you that. So I can let's see if this works. Okay, it should work. So let's just say that if I move this function here, okay, I copy this function and put it right here. So you can put it right here. But you want to take care of this single quotes here. Okay, so all I did was basically put the function inside the area here. This is from here to here because it's in the double quotes. So anything is double quotes, you can have an error. You have to escape it or change it to single quotes. So that's why I changed it to a single quote here instead of double quote. And text you can use either way, right? So it could be double quotes or single quotes, just as long as they match. And you can embed one inside the other. So if I want to use for example, if I use like if you want to put something like this in my screen, I want to say hi JavaScript. If you want to explicitly put that double quote there, well, you have to escape that with the backslash and then another backslash quote, right? So this is the escape character in chapter 2. We talked a little bit about that. If you put that on there, then on the browser, it will render the quotation marks. And then as you can see here, it does not render in error. Okay, if you don't do that, then you can't display the double quotes. So it gives you a way to display that. Well, if you don't use that, then you can take that out. But then you want to change the outside quote to single quotes. So if you do that way, then now it's fine. So you can use, either way how you do it. So that's why I changed that to the single quotes here. Okay, I could have just put a slash and it should be fine. So now if I save this, so I could, remove this whole thing, and if I save this, and if I go back to my browser and refresh it, and let's see if it still works. So as you can see, it still works, just like before. So you can put your whole script in here, and it's completely fine, as long as it's inside the double quotes here. And you have to put that in here, right? Because you have to call the function. If you don't put that function in there, if you just take this out and you just leave it that, then there's nothing. It's not really anything there because it doesn't call the function. Okay, so that's a function call. You have to put that in there as well. Oops. Okay, so let's go back to where I was before. I'll leave that there, and then. So right in here, so now instead of putting that event there, we can still call this button using one of the methods that I showed you earlier. Okay, so you can target this tag called button, and then we'll attach that to a variable, and that variable will call that message button, so that it will still work the same way. Okay, so up here somewhere in the code, because right now if I take it out, then this button doesn't have any event attached to it, right? So we're not registering the event. So to make that work, we have to go up here in the code somewhere, either above or below, doesn't matter. Okay, so right here we'll put a variable var btn is fine. It's a button. If you want to be more specific, you can have it so that this button is btn press me, right? So it makes more sense. So you have to assign a one of these tags, one of these buttons, to this variable here. Because what if I have two buttons, right? How do I know which button I should attach to? Okay, so if I have two buttons, then you can say press me 2, right? Now, which one do I want to tie it to, right? So usually you want to give each of these an ID, right? So that's how you would do it in your script, in your tag. So you can style both the buttons with CSS and also with JavaScript. Okay, so here I could just say B1, I guess, and B2, I guess. So the B1 ID applies to the first button, B2 the second button. And to get this element here, I have to use the document.getElementById. You will learn the others later. There are like 5 different ways how to target any of these tags. Okay, you can use the ID, you can use the tag name, you can use the name itself, you can use the query and the query all, and so we'll learn those. But for now, the most common way is to get element by ID. And remember that JavaScript is very sensitive to, make sure you have the correct spelling. Okay, it's following this lower camel case, right? All the functions, all your variable names should follow that convention. Not required, but it's recommended. And then you have to specify the ID. Again, I should be the slower D here. The ID is called B1. So now I'm targeting this button here because that's the ID of B1. Then after that, I want to attach this to the onClick, right, event. And then this onClick event is going to be equal to this function show message. Okay, notice I don't put the paren there. Okay, when you would do an assignment like this, you don't put the parentheses there. If you do that, it's working in a very different way. It's going to show the content instead of loading the actual function. So just make sure if you do the assignment, if your function is on the right side in this way, because you are assigning to something else, just put the function name there. So now what we did was we created a function, a button, a variable that is listening to a click. Okay, so it doesn't do anything yet until we click it because it's waiting for an event to occur. Let's see if that's the case. Okay, so let's just say we're gonna go back here and refresh. Oops. So here are 2 buttons. So this one shouldn't work, right? Because we didn't attach anything to it. And then this one here, if you press on it, it didn't work either. Oops. What happened? What do you think happened? Anybody? Let's see. Let's do this. What if I copy all of these here all the way to lines 8 of the script? You can copy, cut it, and move it to the bottom of your code, bottom of the tags. Okay, so it sits below the 2 buttons. And then go back and save it, and then reload, and now it works. I didn't change any code. I just move it up and down the tree. Anybody know why? Yeah, so remember that web page renders from top to bottom. Okay, so if I have it up here as I had it before, okay, I'll show you what it means. So from here, it's running from top to bottom. So if you have a code something like this, especially these are not important, not really affecting, but this line 14 here is what the issue is. So line 14 says document.get an element ID of B1. Okay, what it does is because it's in the global space, the code will execute line by line, and at line 14 it's going to look for an ID called B1. And what happens is, again, where you place your code is important in this case. Okay, because I put that code above the B1, which is down here line 21, B1 above it, from line 14 above it, there is no B1. Okay, so B1 hasn't been rendered yet. So therefore, it caused an error. Okay, so if I save this, I go back here and reload, right, it didn't work. And if I do the F12 key, the console, you see that it cannot find on a click because it's null at line 15. Right? So when I try to run this one here, there's no, it's null, means it's empty. So therefore, this one doesn't exist yet. Okay? So therefore, you have to move your code to the bottom, just to make sure everything is rendered on the page. So that's when you move it down to the bottom, it works fine. You see that some of the codes in the book, they put it on the very bottom of the page, just to make sure all the tags are rendered. Okay? So for now, if you are using like the doc get element by ID or by class or by tag, you want to make sure you put this in the bottom or anywhere after the target tag has been rendered already on the tree, the DOM tree, then you can access it. Otherwise, it won't work. Okay, so any questions on how we did this? Okay, so now I don't. Yeah.
The button that says testing 2, in your example, did that testing 2 work?
Yeah, B2 should not work. Yeah, because we didn't attach a B2 to anything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't appear so, and didn't like that. I just thought.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it should not work. Yes, Tom.
So you have to create a completely new function for button 2?
Yep. Well, I mean, you call the same function. This guy right here, this line, right? You have to create another variable called maybe btn2, and then assign that to b2. So, for example, if you click here and Control D to duplicate that, right? And if I change this to a variable name btn2, and I change the ID to 2, okay? Now this variable btn2 points to this button here now, right? And then to call the same function, you can call the same function if you want. I can now duplicate this line 23 and then change this to the btn2, right? So now they both call the same function, show message. And if you click either button, this should show the same message called hi JavaScript. Okay? So you have to target each of these tags with in their own way. You cannot just like make it work at all. If you want to make it work so that it doesn't matter the ID, then you can do that too. There's a way to do that. You don't have to specify like by ID. You can do it by using what's called by tag name, right? So all the button tags gets called one time. So it doesn't matter how many buttons you have in your page. I can have 100 button tags, and if I say get elements by tag name, not by ID, and we'll learn that later, then I can say all the button will work. Let me show really quick here. Let's just say by tag. You can see, right, tag name. Okay, and the name is button. So that means that all the button should work. Okay, so I save that. You'll see that I didn't specify BT1 or 2 or whatever, just one line each. And if I save it, and I'll refresh, oh yeah, I have to put like a, yeah, we'll do this later, but for now, because again, I won't let it happen. You can do this way because the button now it targets all the tags called button. Okay, and the keyword here is the word elements here, whereas the other one it says element. It's a singular. That's a keyword. Keyword. What that means is that you get an array of buttons. because you can have more than one button, more than one text, right? So you're gonna array. So that's why I have to reference here which button is it. Is it the first button or second button or what button? Okay, whereas the other one you don't have to specify. It's
So
just
does it automatically just take those the button tags and store them?
yep. You have
Just
a
read the top down. So
yes.
1, 2, 3. Okay.
yeah, from top to bottom. It ran it all the way from top to bottom. It put that in an array, and then you have to know which button to use. So if you're 100, well, that's kind of how to go and find out which one. That's why it's more efficient to use the ID to target a specific button. But if you don't really care which one, then just say you can use a loop, right? For b I 0 through n, and then just doesn't matter which button. Okay. But we'll get to these things here later on when we call it when we walk down the DOM tree. Okay, this is used for traversing the DOM tree. Okay. Any questions on these events? And we will explore some more. I'm just showing you a little easy way, one way of how you can actually attach a script to an event. You can do it inline like we did earlier, or you can do it this way using a function. Here I'm using a regular function. This is the regular function that you are familiar with. Next, when we come back from the break, we'll explore some more about, or maybe even next week, about the anonymous function. You can do it in many different ways. That's why I think chapter 2 has a lot of this information that I don't want you guys to miss it before we move on to the next one. We move into the arrays and the if and else block and all those stuff.